Megan, how are you today?
Good. How are you doing, Leah? Doing very well.
Good, me too. So I am here with the dynamic and amazing Megan. And let me see, let me make sure I get this right because your resume, so to speak, is very impressive. You are based in Washington, D.C.
Mhm.
You currently are IT support, computer science, engineering, science, and humanities educator.
Yes.
And formerly were a master teacher and vice principal.
Mhm.
And that's just some of it. So if you wouldn't mind, could you just share more about your background and kind of where you're pivoting to these days?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad you're doing well overall. So, I have been an educator for the past a little bit more than a decade and really focusing in on STEM and bringing STEM education to anyone who let me talk to them, basically. I'm really curious and I've always loved to learn. And so I both share and mentor with my own students, but then also share out at conferences. I've done a couple partnerships with NASA to be able to present at a space educators conference. It's actually in Houston, so back where you're at, or close to where you're at. And so one of the things that I've noticed is I've been doing STEM education, teaching engineering, doing really hands-on labs, bringing industry people into the classroom, and then also starting up our computer science program at my school. Is for 11th and 12th graders. I realized that, wow, I really love this work, but I want to look at what does it look like to be doing this work. And so that's really what started my change and my pivot into more of a cybersecurity focus, and why it would make sense for me to be even speaking here at Cyber Future Foundation, because I am switching to this field. And so I actually have a visual for that, if that's okay for me to share.
Yes, please do, because I know that your approach to redefining your career, so to speak, has been, I think many of us have been so intrigued to see, how you've done that and where, kind of just um, your approach behind it, I think is unique. It's unique, if I will say. And I think too, you always come to us so positive and, yes, curious. I will say I'm intrigued every time we get to chat, and usually our conversations go way over the time allotted because we have so much to talk about, but I would love to see the visual and hear more about that.
Yeah. So here we go. Can you see my screen?
Looks great.
Awesome. So this is a visual that kind of just shares about my career transition, what I was doing, why I was doing it. And this is based on a talk that I gave at Dave Security earlier this year. So like we have over here, really kind of thinking about how do we refine our foundation and where are we at? What is that level that we're at? And then also, what do we want to do and how are we going to get there? And so I started to think to myself, well, if I want to go into cybersecurity, if I really am liking um, teaching computer science and I really enjoy this idea of helping others, what would it look like to switch into information technology? Well, it's a huge field. So I like helping people. I like working on problems. I like working on complex things. Well, I could then look into this field of cybersecurity, also huge, but it's smaller than all of technology. And so one of the things that I was constantly doing, I was iterating over and over. I was asking myself questions, and I was thinking through, what am I doing right now, and what am I most interested in, most passionate about, and how could I get there? And so that series of question asking and goal setting really led me to see, wow, cybersecurity is the place for me to go because it intersects with helping people, working in this community that everyone is constantly wanting to learn, as well as just this inherent curiosity. And then it's a huge problem to solve, and things are always changing. So it really kind of hit a lot of my areas of interest there. And so once I kind of determined that, then I started backwards planning around, well, what would it take to do this? And so that's where I actually started thinking about, well, what would it look like to potentially get a degree in this field? I'm already teaching. I already have a bachelor's and master's, but what would I want to do? And so I decided that a bachelor's would be the best place to start because it would give me a general baseline of knowledge on cybersecurity. So I pursued a bachelor's in computer science with a focus in cybersecurity and networking from University of Maryland Global Campus. And so that's really helped me hone in on more and more of the skills and just have a better understanding of the various facets of cybersecurity. Once again, continuing with that aspect of joining the community. I love to volunteer and give back. So, what are some organizations I can join? Well, Women in Cybersecurity, WESIS, was one of my predominant organizations that I joined, and I've been helping out a lot. And then looking for like-minded folks. So like you all at Cyber Future Foundation, like how can we be working towards making the world a better place and continuing to give back and connect? So those are some of the really big pieces to what I was doing, and both being a mentor and a mentee in that giving back piece. So like I said, a lot of it's iteration, a lot of it's making connections with people, and then kind of continuing to ask those questions. So those are some really big parts to it. And I really love this quote by Cleo Wade. I think we're always becoming the woman we want to be. And just, this doesn't have to be like a woman, it could be any person, right? So it's just always becoming the person we want to be. And I think that's a really fundamental piece to it. So we're where we are now, and then we're iterating and we're working towards and redefining. So that's been a really big piece for me.
And I love that quote.
Yeah.
And I mean, overall, just how you mapped this out and the questions you asked, and I guess to some degree, the introspectiveness you brought to it. I mean, I think that's so important because there's so many folks that are trying to career transition into cybersecurity. And you very well thought it out. And you've got so many amazing applicable skills already that you can bring to the table. And I think the other piece too, always be reiterating is key, right? Because technology is advancing faster and faster, that, what we do today and learn today, it's going to change in the next 5-10 years. So that's a big part of it too. Mm-hmm. That is awesome.
Yeah. And I think that's where growth mindset and curiosity comes in, because if you can't continue to have those questions and wonder, you're going to lose sight of how things are changing. So you have to kind of keep approaching things with that sense of curiosity too. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Oh, absolutely. No, I was just going to ask, was there ever like a real pivotal moment when you thought, okay, I need to just sit down and kind of map this out and really look into this to kind of figure out then your next steps? And like you mentioned, you're now almost done with your second bachelor's, which is impressive.
So it's exciting.
Yeah.
So yeah, a couple years ago, I really sat down and I started just determining what would it take and how could I do this piece by piece, because I was working at the same time. And so I literally took out big paper and started kind of mapping things out. I'm a big fan of like Post-its and like throwing down ideas and doing research and just kind of seeing like, well, literally what would I need to do? Okay, let me take a class and see, do I like this? Because it's one thing to have knowledge about something. It's one thing to like do your own research. But once you start really digging in and doing a project and you are responsible for content, you'll kind of have a better feel of, okay, yes, I really do like this. Well, then let's try teaching it. Okay, I'm going to develop an engineering and a computer science program at my school, and that will benefit many students. And then also I'll get to practice teaching this and see what I think about it. And I'll gain a better mastery of the content as well. And so I established that and I started teaching it. And I've been doing that for the last 4 years of my teaching. And realized as I was doing, like I said, it's wonderful to be teaching it. It's wonderful to build that content knowledge, but I wanted to go that next step of actually doing that work. And so it's kind of crystallizing those pieces for me. So it was a lot of brainstorming. And I should have kept that actually, the whole paper or like taking some pictures of it, but it was fun.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of little pieces like that, one little domino led to another. So.
And did you have any, group of folks or close friends or network professionals that you would bounce ideas around with as you did it, or did you just kind of really take the time to, um, you know, do it without the external noise, if you will?
Yeah, so I did a lot internally, and then I would like bring like a summation of my thoughts to some sounding board people. So I would say like, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this." Like I have a friend who has a PhD in computer science, and he's an AI researcher. And I would say, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. What do you think? What should I be looking at?" And he'd be like, "Oh, this is great, but continue narrowing your focus." And I'd be like, "Okay, let me think about how I can like get this to be a little bit more narrow." And then I would bounce off. My cousin is also in IT, so I'd be like, "Okay, I just spoke to my friend. Now, cousin, what do you think? Like, no holds bars. Like, it's like that good family conversation where like they're gonna like tell you the truth." I'm like, "Is this insane? Do you think I could do this?" And he's like, "No, you've got this. You have a well thought out plan." And then it's funny because I would touch base with him from time to time, and he'd be like, "Yeah, you weren't actually just talk. You were actually executing the plan." He's like, I've mentored. He's pretty high up. He's like, "I've mentored like hundreds of people now, and like a lot of people will talk about doing that thing, but you're actually doing that."
Yeah, that is actually what I was just thinking. You are actually doing it, and you've charted out almost your pathway to it, right? Which is so interesting because in cybersecurity, I think there's many people who can say there's not exactly a direct, clear pathway into it, right? And depending also, I mean, what specific role you want within cybersecurity. That's also another big question of everyone to ask as they move into the career. But more importantly, even when you look at once you're in the career, then what's that clear pathway, which is not so clear, to becoming, say, a CISO, for example, right? So it'll be, I mean, just intrigued to see as you continue on your journey and, venture this way forward, if your blueprint there, if you will, becomes a blueprint for others to use and leverage as they start thinking about it when they want to do that transition. Because I mean, that's the biggest piece is whenever somebody says, I want to change careers and go into cybersecurity, well, what's your why, right? And then, here we are too. So very, very lucky Cyber Future Foundation is to have you, as you've recently joined us, as risk assessment and cybersecurity engineer. So just amazingly lucky that we joined forces with you and you're able to help support us. The other thing you've done really well throughout this journey is you're pretty well connected in the cybersecurity space already. I mean, any tips you can share or just how you went about doing that? Because that's not easy for everybody when they're getting started.
Yeah. So one of the things I think that is the biggest thing is there's so many people in this community who are very, very willing to help people, but it has to be that you're coming to them with that kind of exchange. So it's not just like let me hit connect and like a few things on LinkedIn. No, like let's see if that person is willing to have a dialogue with me, and maybe they can tell me a little about their story, I can tell them a little about my story. And I've found that has led to some really just amazing conversations with industry folks, and um, just willing to put myself out there, and they've been very receptive to sharing that conversation piece. And so I think that's what a lot of it is, that people see like, okay, I am a real person, and I'm excited to be in the field and colleagues with people, even if they've been in the industry for like 30 plus years, and they're willing to then still engage because they view it as like a way to also give back and encourage the people who are first entering the field. So I think it's a big part of it is not being afraid to ask, hey, would you be willing to have a 15-minute coffee chat with me? And then sharing like, this is the why, like I'm Meghan, I'm entering the field, this is what I hope to accomplish. So then they kind of understand, oh, you're not like trying to sell them something. It's just that you're genuinely interested in what projects they've been working on, assuming they can talk about it, of course. But it could even be just generally like what their pathway is, because I found that to be really fascinating, just picking different people's brains around like, well, what is your path? How did you get to where you are? And then a question I really like to ask is, I'm entering the field right now, like I'm just starting. What advice would you give yourself for where you are today if you were back just starting? So kind of like helping them see it from that perspective. And I've gotten some really great ideas around, different things around maybe just like taking one thing to focus and really drill down into. So for me, that's been risk assessment, but then also cloud security with risk assessment. And then other people have said things like really making sure that you, kind of like you said earlier, knowing your why, or giving back to the community as well. And that's another thing I think that a lot of people think like, wow, I'm just starting, I have nothing to share with someone else. You're a little bit further on your journey than someone else is. You may not feel like that, but you are a little bit further on. And so you can then give back to those people. And so then it becomes this big cycle of everyone kind of paying it forward and helping each other. And so I think that's another big piece. But yeah, with the networking, a lot of it has just been like, hi, would you be willing to chat with me? And then sometimes it will be at the end of a conversation, if I had a really good conversation with someone, I might ask, oh, is there anyone else you think would be beneficial for me to meet based upon things I've shared about myself?
Mm-hmm.
And then they might connect me with someone else. And then that leads to, who knows what, right? So.
Exactly. And, I want to say thank you to our friend Ashwin who connected us. And you just said it all perfectly. And I think, I love that you just show up with your authentic self, and that I think similar mindsets here where, yes, if you're going to reach out to somebody, always us thinking, well, first be specific, and then what is it that we can give in return? Because we all have something to give. And I love those 15-minute coffee chats. Just amazing tips that you shared, from your experience and journey on this path, and the blueprint, if you will, or redefining your career and path. I love that too. It's so organized is how I see it, but that's critical, right? And again, can't express how lucky we are that we have you in our community, and that I'm thankful to have met you.
Yes.
And you bring so much. And, I'm excited to continue learning from you and hopefully giving back to you as well. And I just want to say thank you again for coming and chatting with me and sharing your journey with us and your experience.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to get to share it. And yeah, thank you. I'm really excited to be with Cyber Future Foundation as well, too, and excited to see what we can all do together.
Awesome. And then in case, I know people can always look at the your business card you had in the corner there, but if anyone wants to reach out to you and chat, how can they do that? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is a great way. You can see my name here. It has silent letters, so it's Meghan Jacquot. But LinkedIn would probably be the best way to get in touch, and you can just search my first and last name, and you should see a image of me pop up and everything. My whole URL has carpe diem in it as well, because I do really believe in seizing the day and trying to make the most of the time that we have here. So. But it's a little long to like spell out a URL. So if you just search my name, you should see me pop up on LinkedIn, and that would be a good way to connect.
I love it. And on that positive note, thank you again, Megan, for joining us today.
Yeah, very welcome, Leah. Have a good one.
You too.